The only real answer to avoid a breakup is to build a securely attached relationship. If you don't do that, you're either going to break up now or you're going to break up in 15 years after you ruin your kids' lives. It's really one or the other. Secure attached relationships are the only answer.
The thing I've come to realize is most relationships I do think should end. I think we should go through several as we learn things through life. But if you stop playing your part, a lot of times what will happen is the avoidant person won't feel the need to put up these walls and protect anymore, and you'll both be able to speak as people rather than as just players in this avoidant anxious dynamic.
What is the worst avoidant breakup story you've ever heard?
Ooh. Welcome back to the I Wish You Knew podcast. Today, we're answering a lot of your biggest questions about breakups. If an avoidant person has broken up with you, why did it happen? What red flags did you miss? What are the odds they're going to come back and that it's actually going to be successful this time? We're also going to show you exactly how to keep a relationship together if you're on the edge of a breakup, or if you want to build a fulfilling, thriving marriage and relationship going forward for the rest of your life. We're welcoming Cole Zesiger, expert on breakups and relationships, to the show. Cole, welcome. Glad to have you here. Today, I would love to talk with you about avoidant people and breakups. Can we do that?
I'm so excited to be back. Had a great time last time.
Yes, that was a wonderful conversation. I recommend everybody go watch that episode. Today, we're going to dive even deeper into some of your specialties with breaking up and what to do about it.
I'm kind of curious, just to start us off, what is the worst avoidant breakup story you've ever heard?
Ooh.
Probably, so there's this lady I've worked with for about 7 months now. It's been really difficult for her. But basically, she was in an 11-year marriage, and that kind of fizzled, got divorced, was single for about a year, and then she started dating someone else who she'd known from elementary school. And they kind of had a crush on each other all through school, and they finally got together after interacting a little bit on Facebook. And they were together for about 2 months, and it was absolutely perfect. He was actually the one who brought up kids and marriage and forever, and she finally felt like she was living a Disney movie after having this marriage that wasn't quite that. And one day they went to this high school reunion, and there was this other lady there who had a boyfriend too, and she started talking to her boyfriend a little bit. They communicated back and forth, but she didn't actually worry about anything because as they were driving home, he kept saying how that girl was crazy and how she was probably going to cheat on her boyfriend. She was flirting with him and he was totally not interested. And then the next day he left her and went with the other girl and just said that he didn't know what to do, didn't have the feelings, wasn't sure. And as she looked back after, she could see some things that were more avoidant characteristics, but she didn't know anything about it before. So the first about 4 to 5 months of working together, it was just overcoming the whiplash of this was perfect. I had a whole future planned out and now it's all over. And that's usually what I see as the biggest through line with avoidant discards is what they're called, where it just comes out of nowhere, is there's a lot of whiplash. And before any real breakup healing can happen, it's managing that whiplash. But that one was pretty crazy. She's doing a lot better now, but that one was pretty crazy.
Wow, that's insane. Just like on the dime, basically. Saw one chick tonight and then off with her the next day.
Yep.
Wow.
And he's still with her too, that was hard too, because she was like, it's probably a rebound, but nope. Been dating for 7 months.
That's insane. So what are 3 signs that should tell you that there's like an avoidant, what do you call it? An avoidant discard?
Yeah.
Ooh. What are the 3 signs that an avoidant discard is coming?
So I'll tell you, there's some things to look for in early dating, and then there's also things that I see just right before the avoidant breaks up with someone. So we can talk about that second one first. Number 1 is right after going on a trip. This is not one I've read about anywhere. It's just one that I've observed. But a lot of times they'll go on a trip, usually with friends or just by themselves. Everything's pretty great before that. And then as soon as they get back, they either become really distant or break up with you. And they also might be really distant while they're on the trip. And what I've come to believe about that is just as you're with an avoidant throughout time, there's going to be some added stress in that avoidant's life, just because they're dealing with a fear of intimacy. When they're with someone, it just adds stress. It's just an added stress they carry around. So when they go on a trip and they're away from you, that stress disappears. And then they can misinterpret the lack of that stress as there must be something broken about this relationship because I shouldn't feel better when I'm away from her. So then when they get back, they start looking for flaws. They look for logical justifications for why they should break up. And then they do.
But a trip is also nice because you're not working, you're having fun, you're going out, you're feeling good. So if you compare yourself on vacation to day-to-day life, that's not exactly fair, would you say?
That's an amazing addition. Totally. Yep. Yeah, that would probably contribute to that same misattribution for what's going wrong. Number 2 is just when life stresses build up. I like to relate this with like a backpack full of rocks. That if you have one rock, which is the stress of just being in a relationship. Avoidant people usually got hurt in the past, so now that they're braving a new relationship, that comes with some stress, like I said a second ago. So that's one rock. But then maybe if a family member dies or they lose their job or they're stressed about a friendship, as they add more rocks in, they can start to look for rocks to take out. And a lot of the time, that's the relationship. So it's really common for just when life stresses pile up, the relationship ends.
So in this case, the relationship isn't seen as an asset, it's actually seen as a liability.
It's a weird tug of war back and forth. Avoidant people are still people, so they still need
Just
love and
sometimes.
connection. They still need love and connection, but it's just tainted. It's scary. They know they should, but it feels bad because of what they've been through in the past. So it's a rock that goes in the backpack.
Mm.
Number 3 is, so we got trips, we've got when life stresses, when the relationship upgrades. So a lot of times I'll talk to partners that are having an amazing relationship, things are going great, then all of a sudden they meet each other's parents and boom, one partner's distant. Or same thing, they finally drop I love you or we're official, and all of a sudden everything changes, like on a dime, like you said earlier. And I think that's the same with this one. The analogy I like to use is we have a circle of comfort that we're fine in. And maybe that's like casually dating. While you're within that, your attachment system's not going to become active. You're not going to feel any stress. That's like your capacity. But as soon as you're out of that comfort zone, then you're going to start defending yourself. You're going to start looking for problems. You're going to start feeling stressed. So that's the third thing I see.
A big piece of all this, and you're 100% right on these, a massive component here is the dopamine that the avoidant person is or is not getting. A purely avoidant person is going to get that dopamine for the first 5 to 7 months. It feels pretty good, and you can buffer over the life stressors. You're not having a lot of big milestones of meeting parents or having the move-in discussion yet, and everything is going smooth until you get to that 5 to 7 month window. Their dopamine is gone. Now they're stressed out and they don't think it's ever coming back. So they go away on a trip and have a great novelty experience. And they say, I wish I could ever feel this with you. You're having the deeper level conversations about meeting parents, moving in. Their dopamine's already dead. So now they're thinking about escalating the relationship and having more responsibility for less pleasure than ever. It all correlates with their brain chemistry that they're not getting, and that the brain chemistry that starts to fall apart in that window as well.
Sure. And this is actually something that oftentimes the partner makes the mistake of, is that they try to chase and influence, right? They try to go after them and try to make the dopamine come back. And the more they try, well, there just isn't any dopamine to come back with, right? That actually proves to the avoidant so much more that there's really nothing there. They go, well, you see, we tried and, you try to be nice to me and, that didn't work. So clearly I don't love you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like A to B connection is broken,
That's crazy. Adam, I have a question on that. With the 5 to 7 months, it starts out as dopamine and then it shifts. What is it supposed to naturally shift to replace the dopamine and the excitement? Is it oxytocin? Like it just switches?
That's a great question. The dopamine is never meant to be the main course of the dish. It's supposed to be the garnish on the plate that just feels good. You are supposed to integrate slowly with somebody personally and relationally and begin fostering serotonin experiences together. And as you accrue serotonin through great conversation, your brain begins to get more personal with them. Now you begin to oxytocin bond after the first couple of dates when it's safe and you've determined they have values, principles, ethics, goals, and you're aligned and you start trusting them. Then you integrate and start solving life challenges together. Vasopressin bonding really initiates. Now that's trust. So you have serotonin association, vasopressin bonding, oxytocin bonding, and dopamine is sprinkled in again as a spice, as a garnish over and over and over, but it's not the main course. For avoidantly attached people, they say, I'm going to get together with you. We're going to exchange dopamine back and forth for 5 to 7 months. It'll be incredible. Then it dies. Whoops, I guess you're not my person. And they lack all the other connecting factors that they're supposed to have biochemically.
That's amazing. And it's because they're afraid to have those deep connections and have those conversations, so they never end up activating those other chemicals. They just get stuck.
They actually can't. So their prefrontal cortex, when they were younger, their prefrontal cortex formed in a way that is overdeveloped and inhibits emotional expression. So when you ask an avoidant person a question that should elicit a personal response where you can bond, they can't. So they go intellectual and they intellectualize and pontificate instead. And then you can't get through them to have the serotonin experience. They also are permanently locked quite often in their sympathetic nervous system, which shuts down serotonin production and only floods with cortisol. Now, when that happens, your oxytocin receptors are closed. So even if you try to have oxytocin bonding experiences, those are shut down. So you're now down on oxytocin, down on serotonin. All that's left is vasopressin, which is great because their oxytocin receptors shift toward vasopressin reception instead when they're not used, and they're misused for years, except they will never allow anyone in enough to solve problems with them because they always expect other people will screw it up and make it worse. So they don't do the one thing that would initiate trust, so they don't vasopressin bond either. So they're blocking out through brain chemistry and behavior patterns the only things that would actually lead to fulfillment and bonding. All that's left is dopamine. I know that a lot of the people watching this show right now have had attachment issues for their entire life. That's why I want to invite every single one of you to check out my attachment repair program. It just might be the jump that you need to go from insecurely attached and lonely and frustrated to fully secure, connected, and bonded in a great relationship like nothing you've ever felt before. Check out my website, adamlanesmith.com, for the attachment repair program.
Can I kind of describe how I help avoidant people become more secure? I want to hear kind of the science behind it too,
I'd love
just
to
to
hear.
like link practical to scientific. So basically, when I have partners who are avoidant, and this might help you if you just got broken up with an avoidant, if you're like, can they ever get better? Are they stuck like this forever? They can. I've worked with them. But basically how I like to think of it is that they developed these things, like you said, like the more active prefrontal cortex, just because that was the most effective way to live in the environment they grew up in. That they might have gotten really hurt by someone. They might have been shown that they couldn't trust their caregivers. So they thought, I need to just rely on me. I'm okay as long as I keep everyone else at a safe distance. So what I have people do to start getting better is first look back at that experience and be there for themselves. I have them write a letter to themselves as a little kid and kind of connect with that past self. But then practically what we do is we look for things that are stressful for them in connecting with other people. And that's things like giving strangers compliments or asking for help at work or apologizing when they do something wrong. And then we just try to systematically get them to do those things and then recognize how it makes them feel, to convince themselves that it's okay to step a little bit out of that circle of comfort every day. And eventually I've seen people become a lot more secure and be able to say, I love you in relationships again. So what's happening there? Do you see that there's something effective in that biochemically?
Yeah, for sure. So I have the attachment repair program with my certified coaches. We help avoidant people similarly. And one thing that we really prioritize mostly is, why do you want to be closer to other people? Do you even want to? What would be the goal? What would be the purpose? If you're going to invest this time and energy, why would you even do that? And this hooks their curiosity and their desire quite strongly. The next thing we ask is, what have you been missing? Are you lonely? And that hits so hard for avoidant people because they feel they are utterly alone in the entire world. And then we can begin saying, what's hard for you? What's challenging? You have to hook in their curiosity because they have massive fear of missing out. Avoidant people do. And one big thing you have to note is that they are usually some of the biggest advocates for personal growth, retreats, learning, martial arts, all kinds of things. They don't not take risks. They take a lot. And they're trying to learn because they're chasing that one feeling that they've never had. So helping them understand what they're looking for, they're seeking the phantom memory of oxytocin, the phantom memory of vasopressin. Your brain still has those memory components in there. It knows what's missing. It knows you're in pain, and it's trying to clue you in to say, this is missing. You're starving. You're hungry. It's somebody with a food craving, and they can't stop eating tomatoes for some reasons because they're craving the lycopene in there, or whatever it may be. Your craving is showing you what's missing, but they don't have the context of what could be missing. They don't have a frame of reference for what they could eat that would give that to them. That's why they chase casual sex, new experiences, getaways, trips, blah, blah, blah. That's what it is. So helping them understand the phantom craving they're experiencing usually opens up a new world for them.
That's amazing.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. The biggest strength of an avoidant man or woman is the logic component. They can logic their way into anything, but therefore they can logic their way out of anything. So when the conversations get to the point of the illogical, they're initially at a disadvantage, because how are you going to use your logic to describe proper connection, proper feeling, exactly what Adam is talking about, that phantom absence. The phantom absence effect isn't describable. So therefore, they hit it with all their strength and all of their competency, and they find themselves completely lacking and completely void. It just doesn't work. So that's the thing that spikes fear amongst fear of the unknown, because you have no idea how to describe this thing you're dealing with, and therefore it must be bad. Because everything else in the world can be succumbed to logic, except for that emotional connection side. It's just not where that processing is done in the brain.
Most of them even struggle to have emotional words when I talk to them. So when they break up, the breakup is usually something like, well, I guess we're just not a good match, or I guess I just never really loved you, or it's not you, it's me. And all the cliches that I'm sure, Cole, you hear a billion times a day. You probably know them better than I do with all that. But that's why they reach that place, is they don't have an emotional language.
Here's a funny thing that happened with me when I was kind of working on my avoidant tendencies. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very beginning, that actually coincided with my exploration of Christianity. When I started actually reading the Bible, and there was a lot of very emotional language, love and feelings, I remember the initial ugh. And it was weird, because it wasn't bad, but there were such foreign concepts that were used in such a different way. It took me probably about 2 months just to get used to reading about them in the context of biblical stories. Talk about a safe environment. You're at home reading a book, right? And you know how this book ends. It was probably the best covered book in the world. And even then, that gives you that effect. It was wild.
I've seen... With the part about not having the words for emotions, I've seen this super clearly in breakups. One of the most confusing things for especially anxious people, when they get broken up with, they start trying to fix things. And they look, does this really matter? Is this reason real? They scrutinize every little word. And what makes it difficult is a lot of times when people get discarded by avoidance, the reasons don't seem to necessitate breaking up. They don't seem to make sense. They're I've heard, they've been together for 4 years and then he breaks up with her because she doesn't like skiing.
Horrible misdemeanor.
They don't have the same taste in movies or something like that. And then the anxious person's like, what the heck? Why does this matter this much? And the truth I've come to find is that it doesn't. I imagine it this is actually, I think this is adapted analogy from Secure Love, that book by Julie Menano. But if you imagine you stub your toe and then it hurts. You have a nerve that goes through your toe to your brain that lets you know, okay, my toe is what hurts. But imagine that communication isn't fully developed all the way. And instead of feeling your toe hurts, you just feel some ambiguous sense of pain. It's not clear. So next thing you do is you'd start looking around your body. You'd be like, okay, I have a bruise on my elbow. I've got a scuff on my knee. And you might choose something that's not accurate to where the pain's actually coming from. So that's what I've seen with avoidant people, that they start feeling like you described reading the Bible, like it's just uncomfortable. I don't feel good. I don't totally know why. I don't know what this is. It just feels bad. So then they start looking around and they're like, okay, it kind of bugged me that one time she didn't go skiing with me. Okay, she doesn't like jumping off high rocks. And my friend's girlfriend jumped off that cliff one time at that lake and I thought it was cool. I wish she would have done that. And then when they find some sort of justification like that, any sort of explanation is so much better than the horrible feeling of cognitive dissonance of feeling uncomfortable but not knowing why. So even if the reason doesn't make that much sense, they don't tend to really dig deep because it doesn't need to make sense functionally. As long as it makes some sense, enough to get me out of this uncomfortable situation, I'm going to go with it.
And that's the amygdala saying, I feel threatened in this relationship and I'm not happy, which bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the actual logic center, goes to the limbic system and says, fight, flight, fawn, freeze. I want to run away. I don't want to fight. I'm just going to escape. So then it comes up with a justification of I should run away because you don't like skiing, because you wore the wrong shoes. That's what that is.
There's a very interesting component to the way that memory works. We do not remember things sequentially. We remember them in the context of the emotion we're experiencing in the current time. That's why witness testimony is so loosely considered by the courts, right? Because your memories will change. So here's the catch, right? You have encountered this feeling of the unknown right off the bat. You've already gone through this experience with other women, other men, whatever. And the only thing that you can retrieve in that moment are the memories that have happened with others. So that's why there's parallels being drawn. It's almost like you take two completely differentiating spheres and you put them close together, and they start what's called a countertransference. They're transferring characteristics and attributions from a past relationship to a current relationship, which have no connection. That's an interesting effect that I find happens with a lot of avoidant people, is when they face that discomfort pulls the trigger for the memories for all other types of discomfort, and they cross-connect them very quickly.
It's like preferentially seeking for the bad parts just because it matches the emotion you're feeling.
They don't even seek it. It just connects. They see it. See it as if it's real. They look at you as if you're a merger of all of these past people, now kind of like shaped into some weird Frankenstein right in front of them, and they treat you therefore accordingly.
Yeah, I see that.
I get asked all the time, what is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? So I have finally launched the attachment assessment. This is not a short quiz that just spits out an answer after 3 seconds. This is a thorough, in-depth, science-backed assessment. Check it out on my website, adamlanesmith.com, and learn your attachment style, the severity of what you're dealing with, and some next steps you can take right now to build very secure attachment. Now, Cole, you help a lot of people who are fresh out of relationships trying to make sense of it. What's the number one thing that helps people find peace in a breakup with an avoidant? Is it understanding like this? We're having a conversation so far about understanding. Maybe people at home are having light bulb moments saying, aha, but what's the distinguishing factor of bringing peace for a breakup, do you think?
Understanding is the first piece. Right at the beginning, and that's kind of the whiplash thing I was talking about a second ago. When you don't know what happened, I don't think you're even on the path to peace yet. So understanding for sure, but there's also too much of that can hurt. I have one client right now specifically that has become an expert on avoidance. She probably knows more than I do now because she's just researched hours and hours and hours, but it's become almost like a crutch and an addiction to learn more, because it feels like if I keep learning, then maybe they'll come back, but they don't. Like you can improve and understand, but it never will overcome their piece of they need to change to come back. So I think understanding first really helps to get you in the game, get you on the path towards peace. But then once you've got the understanding, after that, it shifts towards what can I do now to make the life that I actually live amazing? And what conditions would I accept this person back under? So I can get into that a little bit, but one of the first things specifically with avoidance I have people do is make a list of 3 to 5 things that if they came back, what would I need to see from them to accept them back? And it's hard. Sometimes people are like, they'll never come back. So you gotta say, okay, just pretend so that we have a map. We have some sort of North Star just in case. And then we make it. One other condition I have people do is make sure a 7-year-old can understand your list. Like you just gave them, they know what to do. Because a lot of people will say things like better communication, but that doesn't really mean anything. So I like to say, like, do a relationship review. Once a week, we talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, how we feel. That's more concrete. It's better than better communication. Once they have that list, 3 to 5 things, and there should be some friction in there. It should require change to actually pass that list. Once they have that list and they understand, they can set that aside. They say, I know what's going to happen if they come back. And now I'm going to shift my focus towards my hobbies, my belief in God, my friends, my work, my health. And that usually leads to peace.
Now, how many of the people coming to you are actually capable of drawing a line and saying, I will only take him back if? Because it seems like a lot of them are just like, oh God, if only he would come back, I would do anything. And that's the initial surge of panic and fear and terror. How many people are ready to have a boundary, do you think?
Like 5%
Yes.
at the beginning. That's why it's important to work. I usually work with people for 3 months minimum. And that's just because, yeah, at the beginning, it's more of like, it's actually really similar to what your brain goes through with withdrawal from drugs. One of the most interesting things I've learned recently is that some scientists believe that the pathways in your brain for drugs and other addiction things like pornography, gambling, are actually first developed for love, and then they've been adapted and kind of hijacked by these other things. And that's why your brain goes through so many similar things when you lose someone. Like you can't eat anymore, you sweat, you lose weight. Just like when someone's trying to quit an addictive drug, they go through those similar things. So when someone's in that state, hardly ever are they going to be crazy logical and be like, I'm going to stick to this list. Luckily, just the path of a breakup, if you go no contact, most times people leave you alone. They go explore their own, which actually is really helpful for you because it lets you get balanced while they're off doing whatever they're doing. And in that balance, then people get to the point where they're like, I want to be happy first and foremost. If the person meets these criteria and becomes part of my happy plan, awesome. But that's the point I try to get people to.
Let's dig into this a little bit. The addiction factor. This is very true. Anxiously attached people have something that's called intermittent reinforcement from childhood. Your caregiver, if you fawned enough and got approval enough and you were good enough, funny enough, cute enough, your caregiver would then give you attention in some aspects, even if it actually wasn't happening. So the anxious child felt abandoned, had to do everything they could, tried 15 things. The caregiver came back, maybe it was what they did or not, that their brain tagged it into dopamine and oxytocin, said, I'm safe now because I did X. If I just keep trying hard enough, he'll pay attention to me. If I just keep trying hard enough, they'll come back. And that's infancy in the crib growing up into that. Same thing with gambling. If I just keep pushing the button, eventually I get a payout. Then you do get a small payout and you go, oh, I knew it. I could win the jackpot. Then you look over and there's the convertible with the bags of money in it. Then you're like, yeah, I could win that. So you keep pumping the button and putting your life savings into the machine. It's the same thing inside this relationship. Pumping the button kept me alive as a kid. Now I'm going to pump the button till he marries me. And that's usually, that's the anxious brain. That's the anxious brain right there on Avoidant. This is your brain on Avoidant drugs. And that's the component, is that intermittent reinforcement.
Yeah, and it is intermittent, right? That's actually the catchy part.
Pieces of it. Yeah.
Exactly, because like when it comes to anxious avoidant partnerships, I understand that when people break up, or they get broken up with, I should say, they really tend to go back and demonize and say, oh, this person was never and always. But if you actually disassemble that relationship, you'll see it's in a factor of about 2 to 1. This is actually a study they've done on rats. I know Jordan Peterson loves to talk a lot about this study. That's where I stole this from. So if you need to quote me, go back to him. But he basically said, or the study has said, that in order for a big rat to get a small rat to play with it, it needs to let it win at least one of the 3 times that they're play fighting or whatever. So because if the big rat always beats up the little rat, why would you stay? Like there's nothing in there. But that exact ratio of 2 to 1, 2 losses to a single victory is what gets them hooked. And I have a feeling that if you deconstruct a lot of these stories in your case practice, Cole, you'll probably see that ratio holds true. Would you agree?
Yeah. Another thing I'd add to that ratio that makes it probably more addictive is at the beginning, it's kind of like the big rat let the small rat win 10 times. Because at the beginning, often it's the avoidant partner that's like, let's get married, let's do all these things.
The
because
love bombing.
They're following that dopamine cycle. And maybe they've been through this a lot of times and they've just seen that works. Maybe they've seen that actually gets people to pursue them so much. So then the anxious person looks back to that and they're like, okay, the potential's there. I heard all of this stuff at the beginning. I didn't even bring it up. I'm better than I was last time. Like before I was the one that scared someone away because I put so much pressure on it. But this time it was them. Like, what did I do wrong this time? And then it goes to that same 2-to-1 thing as it goes forward.
Yeah. And that 2-to-1 thing really starts happening closer to the 6 months dopamine crash.
Yeah, call it breadcrumbing.
Yeah, that's really when it starts playing out. So what should you do to prevent a breakup when your avoidance starts breadcrumbing you?
Mhm.
So they've already started pulling away.
Yep,
Like
they
they've
started the
already
breadcrumbing. You see the 2-to-1, he puts you back twice, he pulls you in once. And let's say you saw that pattern repeat 3 to 4 times. So it's consistent.
I think the very first thing is, if you can, and a lot of these are just going to be, this is the North Star you shift your focus to. This is not going to be easy, but focus on happiness rather than a person. And I think that's one thing that really helps people keep boundaries. And one more thing I would do to keep that boundary is if you kind of externalize yourself from the situation, because when you're in this cycle and they're pulling away and you're chasing after them, it's really hard to see reality. So if you're starting to feel like someone's pulling away from you and you're not totally sure, one thing that I would do is get out a piece of paper, write your best friend's name at the top, maybe a little sister or cousin, someone you're protective over, and then write down all of the good and the bad that's happening in the relationship currently. Try your best to not angelify or demonize the partner. Just as many facts as you can. And then see what you would have that person do. And you're usually way better at giving advice to that person than you are to yourself. So that helps you see it clearly. Then if they're pulling away and you think about that cycle, they pull, you push. No, they pull away, you chase, and it goes around. You've got to stop playing your part. And that's actually going to help the avoidant person feel better too, because the thing that's really activating their nervous system is, I'm being chased. This is feeling like control and pressure. So once you kind of take yourself out of the scenario, use your friend's name, try to give that advice, try to follow that advice, and that leads to you to cease your chasing a little bit. Either it will just fizzle, and then that's just the end of the relationship. And that's another thing I've come to realize is, most relationships I do think should end. I think we should go through several as we learn things through life. But if you stop playing your part, a lot of times what will happen is the avoidant person won't feel the need to put up these walls and protect anymore, and you'll both be able to speak as people rather than as just players in this avoidant anxious dynamic.
That's true. The only real answer to avoid a breakup is to build a securely attached relationship. That's really the only answer. If you don't do that, you're either going to break up now or you're going to break up in 15 years after you've ruined your kids' lives. It's really one or the other. Secure attached relationships are the only answer. It sounds like that's what you help clients realize is, okay, I got to aim for a secure relationship that has a purpose instead of, let me just stay with this person no matter what.
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm curious, Cole, because I see a kind of a slight change from the last conversation we've had, and I see that I've seen that you've secured yourself a digit comforter, one of these bad boys. So did you get remarried or what?
Oh, no, I was married last time.
Or were you married last time? Because I knew you went through a breakup. I'd love to touch on that.
Though. So I got married, I think, when did we have it last? Was it around spring last year?
No, it was back in the old studio. I think it was like September, October, I think, of 2023. So I think you were just engaged.
Just barely married then.
Oh,
I got married in June 2023.
Nice. Yeah, he had just barely got married.
That's right.
Yeah, just barely.
Okay,
now we're going to be 2 years next month.
So let's come back to this, because you had a divorce. He had a bad breakup. That's how you got into this space, and I remember that. Then you remarried. You were just fresh, into your experience, and it was wonderful, and I can really resonate. I'm 4 days into mine so far. 4.
Just got married 4 days ago.
Yes.
Congrats. That's so cool.
Thank you. So what is it like for you having come back into a marriage, and what's different this time that's making you not feel like this might happen again?
Two major things. The first one is, I didn't know that love could be easy. I thought that it would be really hard always, definitionally. Because that's what everybody tells you. And I think they're just trying to overcompensate so you don't get your hopes too high that everything's going to be like sunshine and rainbows. So they tell you it's going to be really hard. But in my first marriage, I went into it thinking this is going to be really hard. So then when we started like having screaming matches and doing things that should not really be present, in my opinion, I thought that's what it was. I thought that's what the
That's
game
right.
was
We're
supposed to
tracking
be.
well. We're arguing all the time. It's exactly how it's supposed to be.
Not like each other's families and like do all these things. I'm like, but now as I'm married to Jocelyn, I realized it doesn't have to be that way. If you're more aligned, attachment style is huge, but also goals for the future, where you want to live, what do you want to do for work? You're spiritually aligned. You're both trying to grow there. There's just a lot less conflict. So that's the first thing I've learned is it doesn't have to be as hard as the world portrays it to be. I think love can be easy if you set it up right. Number two is we had a baby. So there's two new things. We had a baby in July 30th last year.
Congratulations.
It's freaking awesome. Best thing in the world. And what I've realized there is the dynamic we had before our daughter was born was we randomly do awesome spontaneous things together all the time. Like we'd go on like 4 to 5 Harley rides a week. We'd go on, I think in 2023, we went on like 6 or 7 trips, like some of them short, some of them bigger. It was just so much time to connect and it was amazing. And now that we have a daughter, one thing I've realized is that doesn't happen spontaneous anymore. And that's something that our marriage on like kind of went down connection wise because of that. Cause I was just expecting it to happen. I'm more like that temperamentally that I just kind of do stuff rather than plan anyway. So what I've learned and what I'm learning now still is love has to be a lot more intentional after having kids or it fades away.
Yep. The research is very clear on that. Every couple pretty much experiences a massive plunge in marital satisfaction after the birth of the first child. It's a well-known thing, and men especially report a huge, huge hit. It's actually one reason that affairs often happen right after the birth of the first child as well. Not to excuse them, but massive, massive danger zone. And yes, it's because most couples are used to, if it's not spontaneous, it's not real. So they just follow the spontaneous fun. And the moment you have to begin planning, well, if we plan it, it's not real. It doesn't feel the same. And so instead, they just plunge off a cliff, and that really doesn't feel the same. So it's better to start planning it. What are you guys doing to plan your time to make sure it's actually happening as you guys are coming through it?
Taking turns. I think they're not like 50-50 turns. They're more like when you're doing a lot of stuff, then I will handle it, and when same vice versa. But sharing the responsibility, both talking about that, wow, this is different. I felt like we had a lot deeper connection back when we used to do our old way. That's helped a lot because then we plan dates. And the crazy thing is that I've realized is as soon as we're in the position to just be on a date and our daughter's taken care of, like everything's fine, there's no need to worry, which is a big thing that I think is probably it's harder for men thinking about the connection because the women's brains are so attuned to where the child is. My wife's described it as I always have a timer in my head of when she needs to eat or when she needs to sleep all the time. So as soon as she's taken care of and we can just both be present with each other, the connection's instantly back. It's just like before. It's just if we take too long without doing that, we can forget that it matters. So that's one thing. Yeah, that's like my main focus right now in life.
Absolutely. I've got 5 kids with my wife, been married 16 years. That timer never stops. Now she's got 5 timers running. You could just, if I look at her, she's just staring at the wall like this, watching the timers tick down in her head. So it is, you must make arrangements for her to get away from the timers and away from the children for a while. But you also, this is actually a great way that men can show care for the woman in their life, is to make intentional moments of connection. Because the whole joke that it's not real if you plan it, it actually shows
it's
love.
More real,
intimacy.
that's why.
It is. Well, it shows that you are prioritizing her.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest complaints I hear about from women prior to breaking up a relationship or a marriage is he never made decisions on where we would go. He never made decisions about spending time together. He didn't plan dates. I had to plan everything on top of everything else. So building that plan and that intention together, you guys take turns. That's beautiful. Building that intentional connection moment actually shows that you both want it.
Yep. I definitely agree. And that's one of the things that's actually a big gap in relationships that are struggling. You just don't care anymore, right? You just kind of let it go.
Define just don't care.
So this is something that I've seen in relationships before they rebound and they actually do choose to turn things around, or before they break up. You just start settling for disappointments. Disappointments become very regular, and in fact, they actually become, as you said, expected.
Resignation.
Yeah,
They're resigned.
You just kind of say, yeah, well, we're just gonna suck that up. So that's actually a journey you don't want to start taking. The journey down the disappointment route, where you just let things go and you sweep them under the rug, is a dangerous one to begin, because that's a road that leads, especially with avoidant men or men who used to be avoidant, towards, well, just this is over and that's it.
Hopelessness.
Yeah,
Back
hopelessness.
to the
There you
beginning
go.
of this conversation. He went on a trip. He felt hopeless with you. He went on a trip. He had a great time. Of course, he's going to come back and break up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, very disappointing.
I was at my brother-in-law's wedding yesterday,
Mm.
and they were giving me speeches. It was really, really amazing. Like, a lot of people were crying. I almost was. I was, but I was hiding it. But one thing I was thinking there is, during weddings, every wedding, there's like this almost, on surface level, it seems like a naive hope that this is going to be the best relationship ever, that it's going to be amazing. Nobody thinks about any of the hard times. But as I was thinking about it more, and my wife and I were talking about it late last night, instead of naivety, I think that's what life is actually about. That's actually reality. And then as we go through life and we get caught up in all the small things, like bills and like kids' naps and things like that, that starts to feel like reality. And then that love and all that stuff seems like just a distant memory. The best analogy I've heard from this is actually like from a more spiritual sense. But if you have like a testimony of Jesus Christ and then you don't do anything about it, it's like standing on a downward escalator that kind of just goes. And unless you're constantly walking up that escalator and trying to improve, then you can just let that fade away. And I think that's what I've seen in marriage too, is I think that as long as we set apart regular times to have experiences like that wedding where we can see, because Jocelyn came up to me and was like, I love you so much. The love was contagious just because we felt it coming off of them. But if you don't have dates or events like that where you can see what life is actually about, our natural state is to forget about it.
Yes.
And then we can just miss out.
100%. To take a slightly spiritual angle as well, the writer Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, he had the treatise called On Loving God that pretty much every Christian denomination in history looks at, about how we love God and how we are supposed to. And in there, he says that we will never love perfectly in this life toward God, or in this conversation, anyone, because the impact of life is so distracting. We can rise to the joy and the fullness of connection and then always get yanked out of it. But that's actually part of the journey, is to continuously, intentionally lean back into it and have structures that renew that reminder and renew that bond again and again. In his case with God, in our case with our wives here, all three of us. But within the relationship, you must have structures built in. Andre, at your wedding, we had a moment, Cole, like you just said, we had a moment where you guys were saying your vows and you were drinking the wine cup. And I looked at my wife past you guys and I said, I love you. And she said, oh, I love you too. Like, it was a good moment. And the rest of the day,
That's who
we were
was
very,
mumbling at the ceremony.
we were very lovey-dovey the rest of the day, because we got that reminder of, oh yes, we made these vows too, right? And we've been together 16 years. We love each other, but it's good to be reminded in that moment. We need intentional reminders. I think that's part of the reason we go to weddings, is instead of two people going just to a courthouse necessarily, you have an experience to remind the people who are there too.
Yep. And ultimately what those weddings are, actually, inside the Orthodox tradition, what they do is that they actually make you drink a cup full of wine.
That was a good part of the ceremony. I loved that one. Share that.
And the purpose is to say, you're going to be drinking this cup together, and there's going to be a cup full of happiness, but also a cup full of sorrows.
I paused. He was like, this is the cup of suffering. You will both be drinking it together. We were like, huh.
Yep.
Actually, fair point.
Yep. So that's a little sobering, no pun intended, part of the ceremony. But the wine helps shortly after. Then you're like, okay, a cup later, you kind of forget about that little
That's why
part.
they give you a full cup to
That's
drink.
right. Like, okay, I got this. I can handle it.
Right.
So it does make you think that a lot of times also it's a question of expectation. So to bring it back to the subject of the original conversation we had, What is the expectation that most people have about their relationship that gets them to the point of a breakup that's so unrealistic, do you think, Cole?
What are the unrealistic expectations that really lead to breakups?
Well, we start relationships expecting them to be perfect, as Cole said.
Yeah.
We start relationships assuming that we're always going to stay in love. We start a relationship thinking that the 10 out of 10 win dopamine, roller coaster is always going to be like that. We have these expectations, but then what hits is that disappointment. So what are these unrealistic expectations that actually will lead you to a breakup if you don't fix them?
I can think of three. The first one, I know there's controversy about on the internet right now, so the first one is, you just said it, always staying in love. Or always feeling in love, I think, is where the controversy lies. And to me, when I think about the difference between a marriage and being in a relationship, like having a girlfriend, the difference is promising, when I don't feel in love, I will stay anyway, and I will learn to feel in love again. That's one way that I like to define the difference between marriage and regular relationship. So I think that that's one thing that a lot of people don't expect. And I think if you have a relationship that lasts a lifetime, I don't know many I've ever heard of that they were in love the entire time. Those people were ones who learned to stay in love and learn to fall in love again. And it's going to be different ways. You're not going to fall in love later in life the same way you did when you were both in your 20s. So I'm going to have to do that, and I expect to do that. And I hope that I'll always be willing to do that.
And this is borne out by biochemicals. We actually find that couples, you go into the relationship, you're, again, oxytocin, everything feels wonderful. But the longevity of a relationship can be predicted by actually the vasopressin bonding that you do. And if you renew it periodically, vasopressin bonding, by solving problems together, going through the tough times together, drinking the cup of suffering, building intentional connections together, working on parenting together, solving problems, vasopressin renews trust. And it makes your brain say, I like this person, I should keep them around. And it makes your brain want to renew the oxytocin bonding, which is a second honeymoon, a third honeymoon, a fourth honeymoon. That actually, as you build true vasopressin, renews the honeymoon experience again and again and again. But it always comes back to trust, achievement together, working as a team. This is mandatory. Everything you just said, 100% backed up by the hormones.
Thank you. Now, one thing to deepen it even more is, if you ever heard of the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he makes a really big point to redefine love as a verb and not a feeling. And to me, that simple idea is what I try to hold on to, is if I'm not feeling in love with my wife, then I need to love her and find things to do that would make me. And I do think maybe this is some sort of chemical thing as well, but when we serve other people and when we sacrifice our own wants for them, we do end up loving them more. So
100%. That's backed up. Vasopressin, oxytocin, serotonin, even dopamine. Actually, by serving and caring for them as well, we can get a surge, for example, of testosterone, us men, which kind of makes us want to go spend more time with them and have more fun activities and things like that, which is good, which usually rekindles some of the passion. And if they are a solid human being, us caring and serving for them, actually, they are grateful for it. And that releases bonding in both of us. So there are many ways to rekindle this passion, but it has to all be intentional. It's not going to happen by accident.
Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is different expectations of roles that you're going to play in the relationship. Every single family that you grow up in is a different culture. So if you have ever lived with anybody or become serious enough that you start seeing how they brush their teeth or clean the house or pay their bills, what their relationship and psychology around money is, you are not going to find anyone that's not drastically different from you in those areas. So longevity, I think, also depends on your ability to navigate that and realize that your family was not absolutely perfect or the only way to do it, and learning from each other that way.
Agreed.
Yeah, but that gets a little bit hard, because then how are you supposed to come up with your own new process that works for both people? Because let's say that, you didn't come from a very transferable family system. So how do you start again? Because this is an issue that most couples have nowadays. They are not living a transferable family system anymore.
Can you define transferable family system?
Transferable family system. I could simply mimic what my family has done when I watched them growing up in order to live a happy and functional life. I'll give you an example. Middle Eastern families are often transferable when they actually live in the Middle East. So I recently visited Egypt. We have a lot of people work with there and just connections. And just seeing how they bring up kids generation to generation to generation to generation, they're actually happy. They're very happy. And a lot of people who live in very large, very well-structured family systems just repeat what they've learned from their parents to 80%. Yes, there's a 20% adjustment. Yes, there's some corrections based on the generation and what's happening in the world. But the values and the principles and the rules and the traditions, they carry over. Most of us got none of that. We're kind of starting from scratch. That doesn't help. That doesn't make it easy. That actually adds more complexity to your life because you just don't know what's supposed to happen.
So your question is, how can a couple start building a system that makes sense for both of them from scratch?
Yeah, from scratch, knowing that there's, that neither of them may have a system that they can just emulate.
Well, there is one proper pathway for building a romantic relationship that will serve long term. The little tiny details might be different, but there is one secure pathway. It has to be a securely attached relationship. As Cole said, you have to have very clearly defined roles. You have to have a clear decision-making process. My marriage course lays out a lot of this and shows you exactly what to do. I teach people to be co-executives together with a CEO, COO model, but it's making decisions together as a couple. If you didn't learn it as a kid, you do need to seek it out now and build it for sure.
Okay. What about you, Cole?
I think one thing I'd add there is because you were kind of saying like, what's the correct thing? How do you know? And I do think this is a unique time that because we have social media and so many, you can just randomly speak on TikTok and gather an audience. So I think that it is much different than it was before, which traditional values are being questioned more than they ever have. But I have like my in-laws, they have not slept in the same bedroom for years. And some people would be like, "Oh my gosh, like what's wrong?" Nothing's wrong. They just both like being more independent and their marriage is amazing. So the bigger thing, I think, beyond having a secure relationship, understanding how to communicate with each other for different preferences on roles, the most important thing is just if you both agree on them. If the wife wants to go and work and the husband wants to stay home and they both agree, to me, that's great. As long as there's not friction, as long as there's not fundamentally one person feels taken advantage of, as long as you're co-CEOs, like you said, then I think the system you design will be smooth.
But a co-CEO model is a bit of an oxymoron, right? Because you can't have two CEOs in a business nor in a family. And I've actually run a business with co-founders, with a co-founder. We did go 50-50 on it, and it created some challenges in that relationship. And it created a lot of things we had to figure out. We actually had to diversify and split up responsibilities and then shift away from the co-CEO model. And I've also seen the same thing work in relationships. I actually don't believe that two CEOs in a single family are even possible. Adam, what do you think?
Might have to rename your model.
Well, so my model is CEO and COO, Chief Operations Officer with a Chief Executive Officer. And I agree. Most women have no desire to be the CEO in their life, in their family. Most women are actively seeking someone who will take on the CEO role in the outside external pressures, the endless stress, all of that, so that they can focus internally on building a harmonious system that thrives for everybody involved, the operations aspect of it. Maybe 10% of couples might invert that, where the woman really has a desire for the CEO. Maybe it's a genetic factor, testosterone, all kinds of things. But by and large, 90% of women want to be in a COO role, and they actually get angry and resentful if the man pushes them into a CEO role. You see the mental load that it gets talked about. You see, I'm in my masculine all the time on TikTok and Instagram. You see, why won't he step up? Why won't he be the man? I'm so tired. You see 1/4 of American women now on psych meds. 1/4. That's not healthy for any species. So It's not a CEO model. It's a CEO COO model where there's full executive partnership, but with a decision-making hierarchy, but full respect between the two and trust as well. So that's the only pathway I've seen work for the vast majority, 90% of couples at least, is that when we integrate that, couples come back from the edge of divorce, even post-divorce. I'm working with a couple later today who's post-divorce, now reconciling, implementing this model to then build the marriage back again the way it should have been the first time.
It's awesome.
So how many couples can actually come back from a bad breakup or a divorce?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I don't think as many as are promised on social media. Not nearly. That's one of the main things that I've learned as I've done this. When I first began, I kind of just parroted what I heard from everyone else. I was just starting. I was learning some things. I read a couple of books, and I heard statistics from all the way from 100%, all the people who claim they always come back, to 65%, 48%, and 17%. Those are the numbers I've heard. And as I've been watching and just observing people, I'd say around somewhere between 30 to 50 do get a second chance. But I don't think that's the amount of people that actually end up together. About half of those usually break up again too. And I really believe from my experience, even though it really doesn't feel like it at the time, breakups are incredible for you. They're so good. They teach you more about yourself and what you want than anything else I can think of. Now, having kids is probably more, but that's similar. It's hard. But I do think that if you try to save every relationship, more than half of the time, those two people will be worse off. So what I try to do is, as I guide, I'm honest with people. I tell them what I see, especially attachment style wise, especially change wise, to see if those people are actually making the changes necessary. But this goes along with what I said a little bit earlier with friction. Specifically with anxiously attached people, when they think about getting back together with a partner, their main pathway is, I need to do anything I can to get out of the way and mold myself and morph my needs into what would fit this person back into my life. And it doesn't end up working for two reasons. One, as soon as all of your anxiety is gone because you have that person back, all of a sudden your needs show up again. You're still going to feel alone. You're still going to feel resentful. Those things are temporarily buried underneath the fear of abandonment, but they're still there the whole time. And then two, and I think even more important, if there's no friction for the person to come back, and that's the only condition they would come back under, then you're building this house of cards that's going to fall at the first conflict you arrive at, which will 100% happen. In life, we tend to really value what we put effort into. We fall in love for what we chase and fight for. So if you're trying to get someone back by making yourself super easy, it's going to be hard for them to love you, and it's going to be hard for them to endure any tragedies or stress that comes.
Well, take that a step further. If you say, I will maintain this relationship no matter how much of myself I have to destroy or abandon in the process, then what are they coming back to? What are you even inviting them into? And what are you trying to build if that's the condition, is to destroy yourself? That's not even a relationship anymore.
Okay. What are some green flags that could symbolize, that could be part of the 25% of couples that can actually reconnect, give or take, based on what you've described, Cole?
One is time apart, which is really hard, but it's usually needed just to see clearly and speak clearly, because the anxious person needs to get to the point where they don't want to destroy themselves, and the avoidant person needs to get to the point where they see clearly and stop pushing things away. So that's number one. Usually people take, I'd say another big lie on social media is like the 30-day no contact rule. That's usually much too short for what I see, because you need time to actually change, like reestablish yourselves, so you can actually make the choice to come back instead of just needing to, because your life is so empty still. So usually like 2, 3, 4 months, people are apart from each other. Next is both people need to clearly have lived life during that time. And by living life, they can differentiate, did I like life better outside or inside? So one major thing that I see with anxious people is they see their avoidant person suddenly jump on dating apps and they freak out and think it's the end of the world. But if you're going to get back together, a lot of times that's necessary. They need to actually see this is life without you, this is life with you, if they're going to make that change. So it's not the end of the world if that happens. It's pretty normal. That's number 2. And then number 3 is you actually need to talk about what broke you up. Not at the beginning. I actually really discourage talking about that at the beginning. You need to have some fun, rekindle things, rebuild some connection. But before you actually commit to anything, before you're back together, you need to talk about why you broke up and how it's going to be different this time. I've seen countless couples that got back together and then broke up for the exact same reason. A lot are probably listening, and usually it's because you did not talk about it. So that's number 4. And then, number 5 is they just try to apply those things.
That's pretty solid advice. So ultimately, we've covered avoidant breakups, why they happen, how to have a happy family, how to have a happy relationship,
Avoid breakups.
how to avoid breakups, how to come back from a breakup, how not to screw up again. Is there anything we feel we've missed, Adam?
I mean, this is pretty dang comprehensive.
Yeah.
Now you are the breakup expert. That's a little bit like I don't know if I want to say it that way, but you are the breakup expert, Cole. Is there anything at home that the audience at home needs to hear about breakups that will save them from pain, grief, struggle, any of that?
I have 2 things that I'd like to add. One is on avoidance, and then one is on breakups. Number 1 is I want to really drive home that avoidants are people. A lot of times, if you get in rabbit holes of avoidant content online, you can start just looking for all these reasons why they're terrible, why they have no feelings, how they're going to destroy your life. And that's really sad because by research standards, they probably make up about 1/4 of the population. And I don't think all of those people are just trying to destroy you or be terrible. They're simply really hurt people that either grew up getting hurt or got hurt in a relationship, and they just deal with the same fear that you have differently. They just don't want to be hurt. They don't want to be alone. They just deal with it differently than you do. Doesn't mean you have to date them, but I do think that it's worth understanding and having compassion for them. So that's number 1. And number 2, I really love the idea that we do not know the happiest path for our lives. The more that I've done this and watched people go through breakups and some get back together, some move on, the miraculous thing I've realized is most times when people end up happy, it is nowhere near following the plan that they had at the beginning. Mine isn't at all. At the beginning, I was married and I had a dog and I was applying to medical school and I thought I would stay married to her, move, go to medical school, have kids. Everything flopped. I got divorced. I got rejected from medical school and I lost my dog in the divorce too. So I lost every single thing I had there that I thought was my entire life. And now my life is way better than I ever could imagine it being. Love my daughter. I love my wife. I love what I get to do for work. I love where I live, love what I do every day. And it's nowhere near what I planned. So if your plan is not working, some faith that maybe you're wrong and maybe happiness lies outside of your plan, I think can be really helpful to stay resilient.
I like that. So what did you have to let go of in order to come to that conclusion?
I don't think I came to it until I was happy already. I wish I would have. I wish I could have known that along the way. But for me, what it was just one day I looked at my life and I was like, wow, everything failed. And now I'm doing totally different things. I'm super happy. So for me, I didn't discover it until after, but for people along the way, I think it's less letting go of and more adding some sort of faith, whether it's the universe or God or karma, whatever you can kind of detach from your control by adding something else that you really believe has your best interest in mind. I think that can help people shift that.
A reverse realization. So what were your contributions towards getting here? Because while it's great to believe in God and the universe and for them to take care of you, you kind of also have to apply some effort. And I'm sure there were certain things that you've done or haven't done in order for yourself to get here. So what were those?
A lot. I went to therapy for 3 years, once a week. I really believe I tried my best in the relationships I was in. Sometimes I made a lot of mistakes. It wasn't enough, but it was always my best. To get my career, I made 3 TikTok videos every single day for like 3 years, and then 2 Instagram videos and YouTube. With my wife, during dating, I went on like 6 dates a week. Like I kind of just went kind of crazy. But with that, what my belief is on that is our job is to do our best and do all that we can effort wise. But like, since we are on the topic of God, what I've seen is that effort is awesome and it prepares you. But for the big things, at least in my life and my clients too, it's usually things out of your control that happen and you're prepared to receive them because of the work you've been doing. So like with my wife, I went on 6 dates a week with all these girls that I would meet on dating apps or parties. And then she randomly watched my TikTok videos and DM'd me on Instagram. So she was not related to the work I was doing whatsoever. And then same thing with like TikTok. Like I made a bajillion videos, like some of them worked miraculously. And that's what ended up happening. I'm releasing a book in February. I had been writing on my own, but I didn't have anybody to send it to. And then an editor reached out to me. So I think our job is to do our best, and that prepares us for the miracles when they come, and we can receive them.
That's actually a wonderful conclusion. And the fact that you're continuing and you do have the faith and you have the application of that faith, which is by the works that you're being judged and received, that's something that applies, I hope, to the divine, but also to people, because people see you and they judge the effort. People have this mistake thinking that, well, we're not supposed to judge. I disagree. I think we are. I think that's a number one thing we're supposed to do is judge good from wrong, right? Good from bad, right from wrong, right from me, wrong from me, that we're supposed to judge. And when people see you applying this effort and having this curiosity, having the faith, having the energy, having the desire, having the optimism, having the hope, that is attractive. And I'm pretty sure that the things that you have also attracted were attracted to that particular belief. I'm sure if I was to ask your wife what attracted her to you in the first place, she'd say something similar. Maybe you added her as well. Maybe a lot of these things that have come to you also have come to you because you're open to receiving them. And unfortunately, with a lot of breakups and relationship drama and whatnot, we become very closed. We become very closed very quickly. We become very closed very dramatically, which is actually largely an avoidant trait. And even anxious people can quickly turn avoidant in the middle of a breakup or relationship drama or a cataclysm. And that in itself is a rejection. That's a rejection of your potential, the other person's potential, life's potentials, God's potential, all of that potential. And that's the thing that's so hard to turn around, is to let go of that rejection and start becoming optimistic again. So I guess my last question for you, Cole, before we wrap up, is how did you manage to preserve your optimism throughout all the tribulations and the disappointments and the challenges you've had, and how do you teach others to do the same?
Shifting your lens towards other areas that are still going well. One of the main things I work with people, I call it a life map. I have them rate their lives on a scale of 1 to 10 based on different categories that are in their control right after their breakup. So family relationships, friend relationships, religion/spirituality, hobbies, work, and then I have a self-care one, which encapsulates like going to the gym, eating healthy, sleeping, things like that. And a lot of times when we go through something really, really terrible, like a breakup or a divorce, we become very myopic on that one thing. We think everything in our life is going terrible when really we have a mom that loves us or friends that are trying to be there for us. Maybe we still are awesome at fishing, or maybe we still have a great job. What I try to help people do is shift their focus towards those things and do the things that are in their control to actually make progress in those things. Like I'm going to call my mom more this week. I'm going to talk to my coworkers more. I'm going to learn how to fly fish. And as they do that, and as they see that they have control over those areas of their lives, I think that optimism is very tied to the sense of control that you have. So as they do that, optimism generally goes up, and they're able to deal with what ends up happening with their ex, whether it's what they wanted or if it's not what they wanted. And in the long term, those kind of people, I really believe, end up winning either way.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Cole. This was quite a fantastic interview. Lots of amazing insights. Really enjoyed that. When is your book coming out again, and what is it going to be about?
February 2026. We're shooting for around like Valentine's Day. That's the goal, but right now, just around that time, beginning of the year next year. And it's going to be about the complete path from getting broken up with, how to take space, how to start healing yourself, how to become securely attached, how to get back together, or how to start dating again after heartbreak. So my goal is just to take the version of me, pretty much, that was extremely broken after that breakup, and then use everything I've learned over the past 3 years to guide that person towards happiness.
Fantastic. Now, in the meantime, where can people find more of your content, and where can people work with you?
So I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Coach Cole Zesiger on Instagram, and then just at Cole Zesiger on YouTube and TikTok. And I just post several videos every single day, so you can watch those. And then if you'd like to work with me, I usually work with people for about 3 months. And the goal is either to maximize the chances of getting back together or moving on and being happy. And the method by which we do that is just building a life that you truly enjoy. We also have a community of people that you get to interact with that are also going through the same thing. So if you want to check that out, that's on CoachColeZesiger.com too.
Love it. Thank you, Cole. Adam, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. You can find me on adamlanesmith.com with my certified coaches also that will offer services to you and help you build secure attachment in your life. I also have the Secure Marriage video course on there that will show you the exact blueprint to build a successful, thriving marriage for the rest of your life.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for joining I Wish You Knew. And to all of our listeners back home, this has been a fantastic episode. Lots to learn whether or not you're in a relationship, have been broken up with, maybe you are thinking of breaking up with somebody, or don't ever want to be broken up with again. This is the episode to watch. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one. Subscribe, follow, like, comment, share, and come back to I Wish You Knew. Thank you.